They show cooperation, integrity, respect, honesty, dedication, trust, stewardship, and self-discipline. So when we do hiring, we look for people that have those and live those every day. If not, we're gonna try to teach those along the way. When a customer or anybody interacts with the IFMC, those are the things that we want them to see. We want them to walk away saying, wow, that's a really, those people that work there are self-disciplined, they really trust each other. We want them to feel that from these organizations. And then the second, the success strategy. So how are we going to achieve that? Again, the IFMC shares these things. We focus on innovation, continuous improvement all the time, agility, high expectations, proactive empowerment, and specialization. So we want an environment where these things are true and these things are happening. Now, one of the things that I will say is we have these values and the mission and the vision and success strategies, but because the companies have been so busy, it's kind of fallen off the radar of really integrating these things every single day into what we do. So one of the things that ESI is trying to work on is finding ways to really get people thinking about these every day, because how many of you have actually heard of these prior to right now? Yeah, nobody. So we're trying to change that. So we all know why we're here and what's expected from us every single day. So the history of the organization. Have you heard the name Greg Winter? No?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? Okay. So Greg Winter is kind of the main name that you will hear associated with ownership of the organizations. He grew up in the Hubbard Lake area. So for those of you that, like online, if you're not familiar, that's like 30 minutes or 25 minutes, whatever, from Alpena. He grew up with a twin sister, Deb, and their older brother, Ron. They lived on a farm, and of course they did the typical farm chores and activities. They worked really hard on the farm. But Greg also, you'll hear him say this from time to time, is I earned the reputation of making things go fast because he loved to tinker with things. So he tells this story, and it's actually on the YouTube page for ESI, but he tells this story about wanting a mini bike. And so his dad, instead of just buying him a mini bike, he tried to teach him the skills how to get one on his own, either buy one on his own or build one. And so he gave him a cow, and he said, well, you can either sell this cow and use the money toward a mini bike, or we could breed the cow, and then the cow will have a calf, and then you'll have two cows if you wait long enough, and you could sell both cows. And so he really tried to teach him about, business and patience and all of those things. Well, Greg wanted, of course, a mini bike fast, and so he would tinker with things. He once tried to use a lawnmower motor and a pieces of a chainsaw to build this mini bike. So always doing these things. So in learning those things, he also learned how to fix farm equipment because he was tinkering with things. So instead of them having to take their equipment into a shop in town, Greg learned how to fix little problems that equipment had. And so he got this reputation around the farming community of being able to do those things. So others started taking their equipment from him as well. They then so he and his brother, they kind of started doing this for other families. And then there was a company in town that was Besser Company actually. They had one of their companies that worked with conveyors, they went on strike, and they needed them to come and fix the conveyors. And so they heard about this family in Hubbard Lake, and they said, maybe those boys can come and fill the gap while this company's on strike and can't fix what we need to be fixed. So they got in touch with them, they were able to help them, and then from there that spurred what they will call the first standard conveyor. And so that grew into a material handling business because they ended up working with Besser and learning about material handling and going down that path. So kind of a short story to a really actual long story of how that all happened, but that's a good summary of it. Greg he really went into the business, not the business side, but the hands-on side of things. So he was in the shop doing shop work with the team as it grew. Ron ended up going to school. He was an engineer. He ended up more on the business side, engineering side of things. And then Deb, Greg's twin sister, she ended up learning finance, and so she's really involved still in the finance side of things. You will also hear the name Matt Winter. Matt is Greg's son, and he is now just really up and coming in the business and taking over. Reacher, for example, is one of his main responsibilities. So you probably will start to hear these names more the more time you spend here. So what is the current state of the entire IFMC? Well, We have, like I said, we have about 95, there might be more than that, 'cause I just sent
There's one more than that.
yeah, I just sent new bucks, so there's probably closer to 100 actually, they're all listed on your sheet. IBU, so independent businesses that actually hire people, they combined have roughly 1,200 employees. It was beginning of last year that we passed the 1,000 employee mark. In Michigan, they are located in Alpena, Posen, Ossining, Gaylord, Lachine, Atlanta, Everett, Hastings, Holland, and Standish. The Everett, Hastings, Holland, and Standish are the newest additions to that group, with Everett not last year but the year before. Hastings, Holland, and Standish really came online last year, and they're still actually getting equipment, installing equipment, and starting to hire people. There's also a facility in Pittsfield, Illinois, in Britt, Iowa, and Bradenton, Florida, but the Bradenton, Florida, they don't have a shop, it's all sales there, so there's a team of sales folks, and we just actually added another team of sales folks in Florida as well. The reason why they're looking at other communities, when I say they, I'm talking about the ownership. The reason why they're looking at other communities, they're trying to create what they're calling IFMC villages. For some reason, I always think village people and want to start dancing to that, but they're trying to create what they're calling IFMC villages. So if you look at what's happening in Alpena, where this all really started, you have sales companies, engineering companies, and then you have your manufacturing companies, and they're large, and there's maybe multiple manufacturing that do similar things, and we'll talk about that division later. But we realize that we're very tapped out on employees. So we have a very hard time finding people to come and work for the companies because we don't have a growing population, or it's growing very slowly. So they realize that if they can find facilities in other communities in one facility, they could have multiple businesses, like maybe a sheet metal processing facility, a powder coating facility, and a welding assembly facility. And if they can hire, say, 50 to 200 people in one area, they can help alleviate some of that work that Alpena can no longer handle. So that's what these other communities have, is really one large building with multiple businesses inside, really mimicking what's happening in Alpena, but on a smaller scale. So that's why they're starting to, we have teams of people that are out looking for opportunities to expand into other facilities. Companies have been growing steadily. Last year and the prior year were some of the best years that they've had, with record weeks, more record weeks than not as far as sales. So growing tremendously. If you think about what happened during COVID, people were ordering online prior to that. COVID happened, and that, quadrupled the people ordering online. So every business now needs to have some sort of distribution. They had to expand their material handling needs, and so they come to companies like ours to handle that. Future goals of the IFMC, we crossed into that a little bit, but really they're still looking at this 35% growth rate. That's kind of their number, is year over year the companies grow by 35%. We have been able to meet that. Most of the companies for the last several years, and looking to the future, that looks pretty doable, because even though this year, we're talking about recessions, things like that, it still does look like the companies will continue to grow in this year and into the future. It's just an industry that is needed out there because everybody's, turning to online shopping and these distribution needs. So they also would like to continue looking at these other IFMC villages. So there's something called Equip Live. I don't know if anybody has seen this. Okay, so it goes to your email, the announcement for it. It probably is in your junk mail because it'll go to your personal email unless you indicate otherwise. But the next one coming up is next Thursday, I believe, at 6 o'clock p.m. You can watch it after the fact too. But that will actually be Greg. I'll live interview Greg, and he's going to be talking about the future state, like 2023 as a whole, and what the expectations are. So that would be an interesting one to attend, to learn about some of the future goals. All right, so we talk about all, these 95 plus businesses. What is the relationship between them? So why are there so many different businesses? Well, like I said, they're broken down into like sales, engineering, and manufacturing. Manufacturing, a common term that you might hear is the WPAs. Those are weld paint assembly facilities. And then you might hear the BSUs, or business support services, business support units. So we're going to talk about what that relationship is between those different businesses. The only way that I can think about to talk about this is to kind of talk about a product. I guess you guys can see some. I'm not going to pick those up. You can see those, or pictures on the wall. But basically, so you'll have a sales team. So this is someone in sales, this is someone in engineering. Our sales teams will either cold call people, they will have a book of business that they work with because some of the same customers keep coming back again and again. They might have people reach out to them because of marketing that's done, people looking for quotes. So however that inquiry comes to them, they will work with that customer. And one of the things about the IFMC is that we don't have like a catalog. We don't say, well, here's the catalog of products, pick out what you need and let us know, just order it. We're very specific to the customer needs. So you might have a facility, say it's 200,000 square feet, all on one floor. They might do the exact same thing as another customer that is 200,000 square feet on 2 floors or 3 floors. And they both need, sorry, I still have some sinus stuff from when I was sick a couple weeks ago. They both have the same need, like they're both conveying equipment, but their space looks so different that we can't just give them the standard equipment and say, oh, fit this in your space. So our sales team will work with people in purchasing, supply chain, the engineers, to develop a solution to that customer's need. So they will work, they'll talk with the customer, they'll work with them, they'll talk with the engineers, they'll work on something that will suit their need. When the customer says, yes, that's what I want, they'll agree to buy it. And then the engineer team really has to go to work on that and create these engineered drawings. Who said blueprints? Blueprints. So they'll create these blueprints for the manufacturing team to build from. And so they work very closely together, and there's all kinds of things in between, like the supply chain during COVID, and even now some things were so difficult to find. They were on eBay, they were on all these like obscure websites trying to find just like little pieces of things that we need. They were getting very creative with what they did. So those supply chain people are really key to making sure these deliveries can happen for customers. So then what happens, once that's all set and once these drawings come out, they will go to shops that specialize in something. So one of the first places that might build something for that conveying equipment would be a place like Metal Tech, and that's what you see on the left. They might do sheet metal processing. Or what's the one down in Patriot Steelworks down in Everett, they do the same thing. So they're going to use things like CNC lasers, they're going to use things like press brake machines, and they're going to bend, punch, and cut out from sheet metal. That's what they become very knowledgeable in, and that's what they're going to do for their job. That's what they are experts in. It might also be a place like this. This would be Triad. Is that what's called, Triad in Atlanta? Okay. Yep. Yeah, TIC. So they might do the stock material that comes in, it's not sheet metal, but it's gonna be like the round metal, the bars, it might be the round stock, tube stock, all of those things that you see there. And they're gonna do things like cut pieces to make rollers, or cut these to make legs or something like that. So that's what they are going to become very efficient in. From there, these are actually more photos within those, so just some close-ups of things that they do, like punching, drilling, that sort of thing. I like to show the technology one with the interface, the computer, because a lot of times people just think it's like assembly, like, oh, I'm putting one bolt on the same thing day after day after day, and that's like all I'm doing. But in the shops, there's a lot of learning as far as technology and having to program the machines, how to tell the machine what to do to create these products or these pieces that come out. That's a punch press or punch machine at Metal Tech, and then this is a tube laser, so it cuts tubes incredibly fast, much faster than the machines that we've had previously. So a couple more pictures of what's inside those. Has anyone done shop tours? No, I think Reacher, you guys are doing them.
I went and seen PMI.
Oh, you did?
Times,
Okay. Yeah, so I think Reacher, a lot of you guys are set up on tours coming up. But then depending on what has to happen, so is this conveyor going to have pulleys? Is it going to have rollers? Is it going to have conveyor belts of some sort? What are the electronics going to look like? Depending on what happens next, it will go to that shop that specializes in that. So we have a shop that does all the controls, so they are designing and creating the controls. You guys might be wiring them, but they're putting that together, and they specialize in that. We have like Bay Manufacturing, they really do a lot of welding for stainless steel. So if a piece of it is stainless, like the food processing equipment that we do, or food material handling equipment, that all has to be a certain grade so it's easy to clean and sanitize. That's all stainless steel. It might have to have pulleys you can see, the pulleys might have to have the rubber lathing on it or coating or whatever. Might have to have certain grooves in it. I mean, there's so many things that might have to happen next. Then it goes to the independent business that specializes in that process. And then you see that's actually probably something you saw at PMI when you went there, that center picture.
I made one of those actually.
Oh, you did?
Mhm.
Is that what you made when you went there too? Cool.
Yeah, and John brought me right back there.
Yep.
Nice, yeah, so that's that specialization. It allows every IBU to specialize in one thing or another, which is really helpful because then you become very good at that thing that you specialize in. Almost every single thing that we do gets powder coated, so the first two photos are of powder coating, before it's coated, after it's coated, and it just came out of the oven. A couple things on powder coating: it is much more durable than wet spray. It is much easier to control the process because you don't have to worry about things like humidity, moisture in the air. You don't have to worry about dust getting stuck in the wet spray that's on there drying. It's a really cool process, and when we do the tours, you guys will see that process.
I watched
So-
some videos of it, it was really cool.
It is very cool, yeah. And it's powder coated. It's electric static, like electromagnified, I think they call it. And so the rail that it's on is grounded, and then when the powder comes out of the gun, it's actually the opposite charge of what is hanging on the rail, so it sticks together like two magnets would, and then it's able to go into the oven and cured. It's like 45 minutes or 35. There was just an article in Equipped, if you guys read the newsletter about the process, so I should know these. I wrote the article, I should know all these statistics, but. And then this last picture, that's Midwest Manufacturing, so that is a polyurethane sleeve that they put on a lot of the rollers. There's some over here if you wanted to take a look at those after, but, so these companies specialize in powder coating, they specialize in these coatings. Then, from there, I see power clips running, so that's why I'm doing both. Oh, this is another, just an example of, this is Specialty Pulley, so they are welding very special and unique, pieces of the equipment. So he's welding a pulley. They're really, you go in there and you see something different all the time. Hence the name Specialty Pulley. So it might go to a facility that specializes in welding of some sort or fabrication. Bless you. I think that was a sneeze. All right. From there, all of those pieces come back to the assembly facility. So at Reacher, for example, at Standard, all of those things have gone through this process of it went to powder coating, well, it went through engineering and sales, then it went to powder coating, and then it went to, maybe it went to metal tech to be, bent and formed and the holes punched, all of those things. All of that comes back to that final assembly facility, and that's where you guys, at Reacher come into play, where you're putting that all together for the final customer. And so that would be your weld paint assembly or welding assembly facilities. This is a picture from Unicraft Manufacturing. Those actually turn, and then this part in the center, something can travel through that. You can see the conveyor. The second picture is from Amos. So that is something for recycling. It looks like it's going to be some kind of grinder that goes in the top there, and then whatever it's going to be will get ground and then shipped out for recycling. And then this is actually from the Reacher facility, but those were Omni Metalcraft equipment that Reacher was just helping to put together. So that's much more what people, I think, envision when they think about conveyors. Any questions about that process? Does it make a little more sense now how all the businesses specialize and it all comes together at the end? Okay. So business service units. When you have any business, you think about any business in town, say Alpena Agency, because they're right there. I think of them, the restaurant that's right there that used to be Take 5. I don't know, what's it called now? Blue Moon or Blue Dog or Blue something? It's probably not Blue something. I don't know where I got that from. Is it? Okay. I want to say Blue Moon, and then I'm like, that's a beer, so I don't know if that's.
thinking that.
It does
Thinking
sound very
that.
familiar, it sounds very familiar.
Okay.
When I drive through, I see Blue Moon, I think it's a beer. I'm like,
Well, let's just go with that then. So.
Yeah, I think it is Blue Moon Cafe.
But, so each of those businesses, if you think about it, they have to have an HR person, they have to have a marketing person, they have to have somebody who does their IT work for them. Often in small businesses, that's all the same person wearing all those hats because they can't afford to have a full-time person for each of those. Well, if our businesses did that, and each of our companies like Reacher and Standard and Convex had to have their own HR person, their own marketing person, their own XYZ person, that would really stretch those resources thin for them. And so instead what the owners did, just like they have someone specialize in powder coating and a business specialize in welding, they do the same thing with these business service units. So each of those IBUs, they work with these various companies who specialize in those areas to get those things done. So Sabre, for example, they do all of the IT work. So if I were having trouble in here, I would call them. I would say, hey, can you help me get online? We call them all the time. Just restart your computer. Oh. So Sabre does all of the technology things. Email issues, all of that sort of stuff. Employment Services, we'll talk about that more, but that's the HR company. Access Resources Corporation, in the next Equip newsletter, there's a whole article coming out about them, but they do administrative type things. They answer all the switchboard phone calls, which is incredible to me, how they keep them straight. Like, they have to answer on the Middlecraft, Employment Services, Sabre Industrial, like they have to know all of those. They do a lot of things with mailing. They do all credit collection, so they work with the credit for customers. They do time card entry, which is a tremendous amount of work. So they do a lot of that sort of stuff, like administrative tasks. Industrial Image, they're right here next door. They are the marketing company, so anything you see, like the photos, any brochures, there aren't any laying around in here, but brochures for the sales teams, sales displays to go to vendor shows, things like that. They create all of that sort of marketing. They're responsible for all the websites. You see them listed on that paper. Northwood Solutions, anybody know what that one is? That one is finance and accounting, so they do all of the accounting, they do all the taxes, they do payroll, all of those things goes to Northwood Solutions. So what happens is the business, even though these are all also owned by the same people as all the other companies, the companies will buy the services from those other companies. All of these companies only work for the IFMC with the exception of Industrial Image. They will do work for outside of the IFMC as well when it comes to graphic design and things like that. Any questions about those? Okay, it's warm in here, hey? Am I the only one that person? Okay. All right. So I want to talk about one of the business service units that I did not talk about was Transall Corporation. And the reason I didn't mention it is because Jessica is from there, and I just want to mention these stories, so I'll talk about it now. But Transall Corporation, there was just a truck out there that said TSC on the side. It's a blue pickup truck, like a teal color you might have seen. That comes out of Transall Corporation. They are the shipping and logistics company, so they have their own fleet of semis and trucks that do the shipping and like equipment distribution between Northeast Michigan IFMC businesses. They don't necessarily go to Everett regularly, they don't necessarily go to Standish regularly, but TSC coordinates all of those logistics. So they get other companies to do the shipping. We have a tremendous amount of semi-trucks that come in and out of the buildings every day. They do all of that shipping coordination out of TSC. So Jessica Dietland, her story, she started out, she was in some finance roles, and then she kind of moved around, did a couple different things. She did some logistics stuff. Well, in TSC, they decided to break that off as its own company to do just logistics and specialize in that. She actually had just gotten her degree in logistics and supply logistics something degree. And so she was a perfect choice because she had all this experience from other areas within the IFMC. She was a great choice to kind of lead that company. So she's the operations manager for TSC. And she says, if you go back to those values that I shared and the mission vision, she says that the reason she's been so successful within the IFMC is because she lives and breathes those every day. So she was willing to explore other things that she could do. She was willing to find new challenges. She was willing to keep learning every single day and worked her way up within the company. I want to say she's been here about 20 years. Keith Hartman over here, he is the operations manager for Unicraft Corporation, which is their sales and engineering, and for Unicraft Manufacturing, which does the manufacturing for Unicraft Corporation. They really specialize in ergonomic equipment. So for example, instead of a person having to move physically along with, whatever they're putting together, they might stand on a conveyor belt if the equipment's too heavy to move, and the person might move. And so they specialize in making sure that that's safe, making sure that ergonomically, people aren't bending over to do it or having to stretch too far. They really specialize in making sure that people are ergonomically considered, or those are ergonomic issues that they look at when they want, they have these people doing sort of repetitive tasks. Keith's story, he's been here, well, when we did this, it was 25 years, so it's probably 27 years now. But he started out, I don't want to say just welding, because it's super important to what we do, but he will say, I was just a welder at what was Bay Manufacturing then. He also, just like Jessica, he wanted to learn other things. So he started to learn about that process and that process and that and he explored all these different things. He also dabbled a little bit in their sales, learned that, until he ended up becoming the operations manager for both of those organizations. He credits his success in the IFMC to also similar things like Jessica, the willingness to learn, his positive attitude, and also listening to and working with his mentor. He said he really looked to people that had been here for a while and tried to learn and absorb as much as he could from them, so he could move up in his career and become management someday. So there are a lot of opportunities, and when Ashley talks to people on the phone, she'll say to them, like, you're coming in with no skills, you're not gonna come in as a manager, but if you do X, Y, Z, and if you give everything you can to what you're doing, the leaders will notice that, and that's how they start to move people up into these management positions. And because we like to work with teams of 7, so the owners have done a lot of research and read a lot of research, and they have found that the magic number sort of how many people someone else can lead and still be effective is 7. Well, what's 1,200 divided by 7? I don't know the answer, but it's a lot. That's how many opportunities there are for leaders. So we really need a lot of people to want to step into these leadership roles because we have such small teams that leaders are leading. So, oh goodness. Whoops. Sorry, buddy. All right. Okay, we're almost done, and then I'll stop talking. So what is unique about the IFMC? Well, there's a couple things that make the IFMC very unique. One of them is the bonus opportunities. Have you guys heard of this? The bonus. Probably. Has anyone been here through bonus cycle? No? Okay.
I have, but I joined in September, so I wasn't able to.
Yeah, we were here, but
Okay.
we didn't get
Yeah.
the bonus.
Okay. So the owners of the companies really like to reward people based on value. So they say they pay what is considered the low end of reasonable for a job. So that's why you see, a welder at X company makes $25 an hour, and here they're making whatever they're making. Because of the way the owners think about rewarding value. So the bonus season kind of starts in April. They start thinking about, okay, what did last year look like? Or up to this point, what does it look like? How did we do? The owners come up with this pot of money that we're going to distribute, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Like, this is a big pot of money. They distribute that to the different vice presidents of operations. So they say, okay, you have $1.5 million to divvy up between your people. They then they put that into a pot of money, and then they go to leaders. Like, for example, my supervisor came to me and said, for your team of 3, not myself, like I don't include myself in that, but you have X number of dollars to divvy up to your team of 3. So then the leaders look at things. It's not just about like how productive you are, which absolutely is part of it, but it's also your attitude. How willing are you to stay extra and go the extra mile? How willing you are to help other people, how willing you are to jump in when there's problems. Have you added any extra value, like I have this idea how we can streamline this process. They look at all of those things, including attendance, all of those basic things too. And they come up with those numbers. So you could have somebody, we'll use welding because that's a simple thing to wrap our brains around. Someone who's a welder and does the exact same welding job as another person. Every day they do the exact same thing. This person always shows up 5 minutes before start time. They work late. They want to get the overtime. They jump, if they're finished with their project, they jump in and help somebody else. They're interested in seeing what else is going on. They have a very positive attitude. This person barely struggles to make it there on time, if on time, is late a couple days a week, has a terrible attitude because I'm just better than this job. I don't need to be doing this grunt work. They don't ever help anyone else, and they don't want to work overtime. this person might get like $50 thrown his way, this person might get $10,000. So that is something that takes a lot for people to wrap their brains around, because you're not necessarily paid through your weekly paycheck, the value, but it's really made up to see how things go over time. Are you consistently a good worker? And we will reward that with this bonus opportunity. Very difficult to recruit on that, because it's hard. There's a component of trust in there. Trust that if I do put this work in, you're going to reward me. But I can tell you, I have not seen anyone who puts that kind of work and not get rewarded. So that's what I'll say. It is a very unique way of looking at pay and value.
I haven't heard anybody disappointed, and on top of that, a lot of people have said it's up to you.
It's absolutely, yep, and that is so accurate. Yep.
I would like to add to that. So
Yes.
I would just say, keep in mind that it does take a while to start seeing it though. So if you don't see it right away the first time around, the reason is because when they give them out, it's from everything that was done the previous year. So
Yeah.
it can take some time, but once you start seeing it, you're gonna see it can greatly increase your wages.
Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So if I wanna move somewhere, as in like into a different company to do, I guess, harder work because the stuff that I'm doing now is too easy,
Mhm.
would that transfer over also?
So that is going to be up to the leaders. So the previous leader that you're transferring from, it is going to be up to them if they still want to give you a bonus for the work you did there. And the new leader could also include you in their bonus, but it's going to be, every situation is going to be different based on the leader's desire. Excuse me. Yeah. Which is, I know, not like
So,
an
like, if
ideal
you work
answer, but
there for like a whole year, and then you leave to go to a different place, and it's around that bonus time, would they still have to pay you for that since you worked there for a
they
whole
don't have
year?
to.
Okay.
But they might. Some
Okay.
have, and some don't. Because it's like if someone quit, like if I quit now, I worked here all last year, so I would not get the bonus from last year because I left.
Okay.
But if I quit, like went to work for a different IBU, my current supervisor might say, no, you still added some pretty good value in that year. We're still gonna give you a bonus even though you're not with us anymore. So it's really gonna depend on the leader and what they desire.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's not like it's not like a this black and white answer, but it's all leadership
No, it
dependent.
makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions on that?
So you do start from the bottom if you transfer. Like I'm going over to Metal Tech and talking to Lucian today.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably just start from the bottom then and then.
Well, not necessarily, because again, it's gonna be up to the leader. Like if he may go talk to your previous leader and say, hey, how'd she do? Should we include her in the bonus? Your previous leader might say, we're still gonna give her something because she was here. It really depends on the leadership
Oh,
and what they desire to do.
Have you had your review yet?
not yet. I think that's what's going on.
I got told that if I transferred before my review, that my review would restart.
Oh, yeah, I did have it.
Okay, so that would be your leader's
Right.
philosophy on that.
Yeah, he said that basically if I transferred over to somewhere else, then that leader would restart the
Yeah,
cycle on that.
it just depends on the leader.
Again, when I said they're all very
Yeah.
different.
Yes, yeah, and it's a hard question, because the owners also, they're called independent business units. These businesses are truly they pay their own taxes, they're set up as an independent business, like the state and the federal government see them as a standalone business. So the owner does not dictate those things, they leave it up to the leaders to make those decisions for their business. So that's why it's hard there's not like a black and white, it's not like the owner is saying, you have to do it this way, it's up to the leader. And some leaders understand, like, I want a good person, like if I want you to come to Metal Tech or whatever, like I know that I have to treat you right, and that's the way that I look at it, whereas another one says, oh no, I'm gonna treat you like a brand new employee. So it really depends on their leadership style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which there's pros and cons to running the businesses that way, but to leave so much autonomy in the hands of the leaders really like that. Instead of being told, like, you have to do this, you have to do that. Yeah. Any other questions about that bonus opportunity? So when I first started working here, I was like, with the recruiting stuff, I said, how do you recruit? Like, what can I tell people about this? Oh, it's discretionary. You may or may not get a bonus. And what numbers can I give them? And they're like, well, we don't give numbers because we can't make guarantees. And I said, well, just give me like something that I could work with. And they said, okay, tell people that they could get anywhere from $0 to equal to their base annual salary. That's the range that people can get. And they're serious about that. What's that?
I said, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, they
didn't
are
realize that
serious
they
about
could
that.
go To that much.
Mm-hmm. So think about
It
doubling.
is crazy how much. they
Oh,
give
there,
out.
I've seen, I don't know, I don't see all the bonus numbers, but I have seen some
The
significant numbers.
most I've seen was 20 grand.
Mm-hmm,
My fiance works over at CSI and he said there's a guy that actually got 50,000.
mm-hmm. I mean, these are real numbers, like, add that to your base salary
They
and
must be really good workers.
they are adding value, they are contributing, they're making things better overall. It's all about adding that value, so. The opportunities are out there, but it's not, you can't just go in and be like, hey, I worked hard today, do I get a bonus? Like, no, you gotta be that consistent person all year long. The second thing that's unique about the IFMC are the growth opportunities. So anytime you work for a company that is growing like these companies are, it doesn't have to be said, but it comes with all of these opportunities, because as we expand there, we need someone to lead that. As we do that, we need someone to lead that charge. And so it comes with tremendous amount of growth opportunities. So if what you're doing right now is not ideal for you, the best advice I can give you is to stick with it, do the very best that you can. Don't say, oh, I'm just doing this so I can do something else. Just, stick with it. Realize it's your foot in the door to access some of these growth opportunities. And when something comes along, pay attention to the ESI site and job postings. Tell your leader that you're interested in expanding your knowledge and your skill set. Make that known, because there are so many growth opportunities. And people that have been here for 20 years or more, they will tell you, I didn't start out doing what I'm doing. I started out deburring at Metaltech. I started out welding. Whatever it may be. If you have that ambition, the opportunities are there. And then the third thing that's very unique about the companies is this concept of the independent business units. We've talked a little bit about that, but just a couple things that I want to share about why that's so unique. One, it allows that specialization. So you don't have one person having to know powder coating, welding, assembly, sales, engineer, all of those things. You have people that specialize in these areas. The other thing is that it decreases the risk for the organization. So in two different ways. One, in sort of a physical aspect, if you think about it, like if something happened to one of our facilities, like we don't want this to happen, but let's say there was a fire, it destroyed the building, nobody got hurt, but we have repetitive things that are happening, for lack of a better word, where they can still get the work done because we have other facilities that could take on that work. So it cuts down on the risk of not being able to meet the customer needs if something physical happened to a building, but it also decreases the risk because let's just say, for example, and again, we don't want this to happen, but let's say that Unicraft, for example, shipped out some equipment, it was sold through their Unicraft Corporation, it was manufactured by them, and so the delivery went from Unicraft, that's who the customer had the contract with, and somebody got hurt on a faulty piece of equipment that they designed. Legally speaking, they could only sue Unicraft Corporation. They couldn't sue the 1,200 employee organization and all of those businesses. So it really decreases that risk as well to have those independent businesses, which is really good for job security because it lessens that threat of like some giant lawsuit, making the company go bankrupt or something like that.
It's actually pretty smart.
It is. Yeah, there are a lot of pros and cons. There's a lot of pros to the independent business unit thing. Some of the cons, I'll mention them more in the next slide, but there are a couple things that it makes difficult as well. So those are really the things that, just want to make sure. Oh, the other thing, it allows for the quick turnaround time that for the independent business units, because if you think about, if we were all employed by the same company and we were more of mass production and a specialty order came in and we had to stop what everyone was doing to like change out all of the plans of everybody, that's a significant amount of time. And so these independent businesses, it allows us to be very responsive to customer needs. Like our delivery times, that is really what sets us apart the most from other competitors, is we have these really quick delivery times because we can respond so quickly to the needs of the customers. So we are almost done. Employment services. So what does employment services do? Well, you guys did your paperwork through ESI. You probably worked with April or Miranda or Leslie and you did your paperwork when you were onboarding. But it's so much more than that. So if you ever have questions about benefits, you have questions about 401k, you want to make changes to your, how many taxes are taken out of your pay, things like that, just reach out to ESI. They'll help you with all of that stuff. We also, though, do training opportunities. So this, for example, we just started this last year. This is probably our 5th month of it or so. One of the things that we realized is that people were doing their paperwork, and then we were like, here, go work for CXC. And then they start hearing all these different acronyms, and they start hearing about all these different companies, and they're like, whoa, how does this relate to CXC? I don't know what this means. So we decided to start this event. Last year, the year before, we did some leadership training. We're looking at more opportunities to create like sales training, things like that. So we are trying to expand more and to do more training opportunities. We also can assist with career growth. So if you really do feel stuck where you're at, you want to explore another opportunity that you see on the ESI page, reach out to us, just have the conversation. I take calls pretty regularly, a couple times a month, of people that like, oh, I currently work for this, but I see this job online, and can you tell me about that? Absolutely, we'll walk you through the process of how to explore that. Like what's the right thing? When do you tell your supervisor? When do you reach out to the person and talk to them? All of those things. So feel free to reach out to Ashley, myself, anyone from our team. And then awareness. Prior to working here, like when I first started working here, I realized that employees that worked here, they had no idea what the big picture was. They didn't know where equipment was going. They didn't know how many people worked here. They didn't know how many businesses there were. There were a lot of things that they just came to work and did their job. Well, research shows that when people have a better understanding of the big picture, they're more likely